Hey, this is Rex, and you're watching the Brick Ninjas. Alright, today we're going to talk about Rogue One. Rogue One is my favorite Star Wars film, and this may be sacrilege to some of you, but I feel like Rogue One is more Star Wars than all the previous Star Wars movies. I think Gareth Edwards got it right in that movie. He got it gritty, he made it more realistic, he showed Vader in his prime. He showed how maniacal and evil the Empire were with Krennic and Tarkin. And he really developed some good characters in there with Jyn and Cassian Andor. And there were so many good actors in this movie and so many great characters. And none of them got too much time other than the main characters that needed it. There was a good balance of humor and some darkness in there. It was more Star Wars, like I said, than the other Star Wars films, I think. Behind that, my favorite Star Wars films are... It's split between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, because I really like seeing Luke kind of get to the pinnacle of his powers. And then after that, of course, Star Wars, the first one. Revenge of the Sith. Probably The Force Awakens. Phantom Menace. And the Clone Wars, or the Attack of the Clones, is kind of my order. With that said, let's talk about some of these characters in this movie and what this movie is about. So, Rogue One is set between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope. And this is the time when the Empire is kind of reaching its pinnacle, and the Rebellion is starting to kind of whip into a frenzy and gain some traction too, and being formidable against the Empire, though their odds are still stacked against them. So in this movie, they have to steal the plans for the Death Star in order for A New Hope to kind of make sense. And it sits perfectly right there. So the premise and the plot are pretty simple, but what they do in that kind of sandbox is really, really, really interesting. I really, really liked Jyn's character, and Felicity Jones played it amazing. Like, she wasn't annoyingly, I'm gonna be a tough girl. They made her believable. Like, she was traumatized by watching her mom get murdered and her dad being taken away. She ran out to a secret place, was raised by a guerrilla fighter, who, to her knowledge, abandoned her, which we get into a little later. And, she has a chip on her shoulder. It's understandable. It's something I could relate to and understand. And if I was put in that situation where you'd seen these traumatizing things, you were raised in this really harsh way, you would be pretty angry and just doing whatever you could to survive, which is what she does. At the same time, she doesn't have very much to live for, but you can tell that she wants something to live for. They start with her character after she sees, her parents taken away. They kind of zip forward and they, you pretty much understand she's had a harsh life. So she's in prison. They're transferring her somewhere, and she gets rescued by the Resistance, whom she tries to fight and get away from. And there's this really funny scene where she jumps out of the truck that she's being hauled in by the Empire, the Imperial troops, the stormtroopers. And there's this really cool scene where she's getting out of after she gets rescued, she's running out of the truck, beating up the people trying to rescue her, because she really wants to be free. She's a free spirit. She doesn't want... I don't know if so much as she's a free spirit. She just doesn't want to be bothered or in anybody's control. She doesn't want to make any type of attachments. So she's willing to even bite the hand that feeds her, because anytime that she's had emotional attachments, those have been ripped away from her. And it's made her vulnerable, and it's made her hurt, and she doesn't want to be hurt and weak and like I said, vulnerable. So she even attacks everybody when she gets rescued. And there's this hilarious scene where she jumps out of the truck, and K2SO, which is the new droid in this movie, catches her and just slams her down. It's rough. And tells her, "Oh, relax, you're being rescued," which is, I can't remember his exact words, but it was hilarious. I remember thinking that was really funny when I saw the movie.
Congratulations, you are being rescued. Please do not resist.
So her character is pretty much, like I said, this... she has reasons to be the way she is, and they did it very well. I mean, it was believable to me. That's what I look for when I watch a movie. Is I want a character to be identifiable, or at least somebody I could understand. That's what I really appreciate about it. And this is a totally different movie. But Man of Steel was more believable rather than just some maniacal, I'm going to destroy everything because I'm an egotistical person. He had a purpose for what he was doing. Anyways, getting back to Rogue One, Jyn's character has purpose. Now, I'm going to go through this character by character, so I'm going to kind of skip around in the movie just to kind of go through the characters and why I liked them and what I liked about them. So, there's a scene later after she gets rescued where she goes through all this stuff. She finally gets to meet Saw Gerera, who was basically her kind of surrogate father after her father was taken away. And she sees him again and hadn't seen him in a while. And there's this kind of cool emotional scene where she gets mad at him and she kind of exposes herself for a moment and says, "You abandoned me." And he's like, I had to. People knew who you were, that you were the daughter of an Imperial officer, and they were willing to use that against you. So, she has like this emotional reaction that you're like, yeah, she can tell, like, okay, he did the right thing, even though it was painful as hell. That was the right thing to be done for her. And you can see a little bit of forgiveness in her. Felicity Jones, and I have to say, Gareth Edwards, in directing her and doing this scene, I mean, did it masterfully. Did it masterfully, if I can say that word right. I mean, she looks emotional. You can tell she's a little bit crushed, a little bit sad, and somewhat relieved. So she did that really, really well, and Gareth got a good thing out of her. Now there was something interesting I thought when Saw Gerera and her are talking too, when she's kind of he's like, you don't care about the cause anymore. You don't care about trying to gain freedom. There's Imperial flags everywhere, and she says, and this is kind of what reveals to me that her character feels like she doesn't have much to live for. She says, it's not a problem if you don't look up. So she's basically living in her own world, rejecting reality, and just, subjugating her own. She's basically given up and all that kind of stuff. And this is a pinnacle moment, too, because they expose all that about her, and then he says, well, he has that message from her dad, who she hasn't seen in like 15 or 16 years. So he shows her that message, and her reaction to that is another just amazing, powerful scene to me, because you can see it all, just all that angst and all the pain, everything kind of drain away in a sense and get replaced with some hope. She's like, oh my gosh, my dad's still alive, he actually loves me, he's had to live this terrible life, he's trying to do the right thing, and subvert the Empire. Maybe there's a chance that we can reverse all this and actually destroy this terrible weapon, whatever it is. And what's interesting is at the same time that she's feeling all this, the Death Star is actually destroying Jeddah, the city that she's in.
My Stardust, I can't imagine what you think of me. When I was taken, I faced some bitter truths. I was told that soon enough Krennic would have you as well. As time went by, I knew that you were either dead or so well hidden that he would never find you. I knew if I refused to work, if I took my own life, it would only be a matter of time before Krennic realized he no longer needed me to complete the project.
It was just beautifully done. And that also creates a reason why she doesn't get the message, that everybody just kind of has to believe what she saw later on in the film. So moving on, let's talk about Cassian a little bit. There's a point in the film, Cassian's played by Diego Luna, and there's a point in the film where they're captured and they're in a prison with, if I'm saying his name, Chirrut and Baze, sorry, who are these two other characters that live in Jeddah and were kind of guardians of the where they protect the kyber crystals that are in the city and stuff like that. Anyways, there's a scene where Chirrut says to Cassian, there are many types of prisons. I suspect you to carry yours wherever you go. And I think that's a really revealing kind of thing about Cassian Andor's character. And even that character, you kind of looks at him weird, like, oh, he's kind of figured me out in a way. And he gives him a look because he knows that he's blind and he can't see him, but he actually can see him, which is interesting. Chirrut is actually a person or a character who sees with his soul, not with his eyes. And this is kind of a running theme we're going to see in a lot of movies where people, if somebody doesn't have eyes, It either means that they don't have a soul, or that they actually can see people's soul with their soul. This is something to remember for Blade Runner 2049, because there's a lot of blind characters in that movie. And that has more or less the meaning that they don't have souls. So, moving on, he says that to Cassian, and this reveals to me about Cassian's character being, he carries his guilt with him because he's had to do a lot of terrible things in the name of the rebellion and the resistance. There was an earlier scene in the movie where he had to kill an informant because he couldn't get away and get the information he needed to get to the resistance if he hung around with this guy, because he was injured and he wouldn't be able to escape with him. And I remember when I first saw that, I was like, damn, that's pretty cold to be in Star Wars. It was unsettling for me to see that in a Star Wars film, like a cold-blooded killing like that. But as you watch the movie and you understand that character, it makes more sense. And it's not something that I think that character was proud to do, but it's something that he had to do in order for the resistance to move forward and to actually beat the Empire. So that's what Chirrut means when he tells him he carries his prison with him. He feels bad and guilty for all the terrible things that he's done to advance the cause. Cassian's character is pretty cool. He's not two-dimensional, which I like. He's three-dimensional. He's got some depth to him. He has to make decisions. You can see there's an internal struggle, especially when he's been given the order to kill Galen, which is Jyn's father, and they get to the Edu, the planet where Galen is, and he has him in his sights, and he's like trying to decide whether he should do it or not, and realizes he shouldn't. Even though he still feels guilty about not following the order, but he didn't want to kill this person. So I like his character because he, like I said, he has some depth, and he changes over time, and there's a nice arc for him, and him and Jyn, I think, work well together. They had a good chemistry, and I really enjoyed watching them work together in that film. It was great. It's going to be hard to go over all these characters, but I'm going to try and do it and do it in such a succinct way. Anyways, another great character is Galen Erso, who's played by Mads Mikkelsen, who's another actor I really enjoy watching. One of my favorite films with him was in Casino Royale, which I have a poster in my office of on the other side of the wall over there. That was a great movie. But Mads Mikkelsen, he has very little screen time in the movie, but the little time that he does it really well, and I enjoy watching that character and kind of providing the information that he needs to provide to his daughter, and the emotion and the purpose that he gives her, even in the short amount of time that he's in there. And they did a good job, even with the limited time that he's in the film, of building that connection that he has and that love that he has for his daughter, and how he doesn't want to be a part of something that is destroying the universe and taking away people's freedom. He wants to be left alone, and you kind of see some of that in his daughter. So he was a great character, great actor, even though there wasn't much of him in the film. I wish there was more, but I understand that I don't think they could put much more in there without kind of throwing something off in the movie. So he was in there just perfectly. Ben Mendelsohn, he plays Orson Krennic, this ruthless and maniacal director for the Empire. His job is basically, he oversees the construction and the development of the Death Star. And he's very ambitious. And this is kind of brought about in a couple ways. My favorite scene, though, with him is when they had just destroyed Jeddah with the Death Star. And him and Tarkin have kind of had some talks in between here. And Tarkin turns around and tells him that he owes an apology, that the Death Star works perfectly. And Krennic says, "So you'll tell the Emperor." And basically what he's saying is, I'm going to get all the accolades for this success. And Tarkin, who is this is such an evil character and plays it so well, says, "Oh, I'll be telling the Emperor that I'll be taking charge of the weapon that I promised him years ago." And this reaction right here has got to be my favorite scene in the movie. Krennic explodes on him and says, "This is we stand on my achievements, not yours. And like, I love how angry he gets, and I love how cool, calm, and collected Tarkin is, because that just shows how maniacal, diabolical, and evil that Tarkin is. That he doesn't even raise his voice, because he knows Krennic can't do anything. He's not even afraid of Krennic for a second. And he just kept his cool, and I just was like, gosh, this guy's a psychopath.
We stand here amidst my achievement, not yours!
I'm afraid the recent security breaches have laid bare your inadequacies as a military director.
But he played it so well. This is one of my favorite scenes because it's so emotionally tense, and it just erupts and then it goes back down really quickly, but it was beautifully done. That was one of my favorite scenes, but Ben Mendelsohn played that character perfectly. You can see that he's a little Weasley. Even when he talks to Vader later on, he's like, "Oh, so you'll tell the Emperor?" You know, he's just looking for accolades. He wants power. He wants to be in charge of things. He wants to be at the top. But he knows who's in charge, so he kind of pleads with them a little bit. And how Vader, of course, handled him when he asked that question. He force chokes him, which was beautiful. I almost feel sorry for Krennic a little bit because he's not getting the accolades that he wants. But he's so bent and evil, and he's willing. You know, he kills Galen's wife and doesn't let anybody get in his way. He just doesn't. He doesn't care, and he kind of likes to toy with people, especially when he went to Edu to take care of what he thought was there was a leak there. He thought it was one of the scientists, and of course Galen comes out and says, "No, it was me." He kills the scientist anyways to show he doesn't care. He's not going to let Galen feel like he saved anybody, and he's going to kind of rub it in his face. Ben Mendelsohn played that character beautifully. He's also great in The Dark Knight Rises. There's that wonderful scene with him and Bane, which I'll drop in right here.
Leave us.
No, you stay here. I'm in charge.
Do you feel in charge?
I've paid you a small fortune.
This gives you power over me?
What is this?
That's another movie you should check out. Anyways, Krennic, Ben Mendelsohn, great characters. I loved his costume, that white cape and all that looked really cool. It made him stand out and be very different, but yet a very crucial part of what was going on. Moving on, Tarkin. I remember before I saw the movie, I had heard rumors, and I was like trying to keep myself away. I didn't want to hear any rumors, get the movie spoiled. But yes, Tarkin makes an appearance in the film. And the original character was played by an actor named Peter Cushing. And Peter Cushing's estate, his family, he died in the 90s, I think 1994. His family said, yes, you can use his likeness. They gave it to Disney to license and stuff, and I'm sure they got some pay for that. But they did a really, really good job. The character that plays him is named Guy Henry. They had a physical stand-in so they could kind of map what they were going to put the CGI on. And he did a really good job. I mean, he kind of looks like Peter Cushing. He even did the voice for him in the movie, and he sounds very much like him. Did a great job. I was really impressed with that. The only thing about it was the mouth sometimes it seems a little awkward, but otherwise, gosh, that was amazing. And I loved how they revealed him, because he's standing there looking at the Death Star from one of these battleships, and there's just a reflection, and then you think, oh, they're not gonna really show him. They didn't have quite the budget or something. They couldn't do it. And he turns around and it's him, and it was just amazing. And the way they played that character was amazing. Like I said, that one scene I really liked where he keeps his cool. He does not care about Krennic erupting or exploding on him. He's not even afraid. He knows he's in charge. His character is confident and self-assured, yet ruthless and, like I said, diabolical. He's cunning and smart. He uses Krennic to kind of complete the Death Star, but he knows that he's going to take charge. He's going to take charge. And he seeks what is expedient, not really what is meaningful. So he's just an evil kind of character, but so calm and cool about it. So that was another character I liked. There's so many good characters in this film. This film is so good. There's so many good parts, and then I think what really was the cherry on top of the ice cream was almost like 50 cherries on top of the ice cream, was when they had Darth Vader in that last scene, just kind of going off and being Vader, the Vader that we've always wanted to see since, for the past 40 years, comes out and just, lays down the law in that one scene. You're like, okay, that's the badass Vader that I know, that I've always envisioned him to be. And what's great about it is they did it so well that in the rest of the movies, you know that Vader doesn't have to do anything. Because in the earlier films, Vader doesn't do much. He's kind of clunky. He does fight Luke, of course, in Empire Strikes Back. But he uses more of his Force abilities. But the fact that they did that in that movie, you're like, okay, no, I know Vader's a badass. He can do things with his mind. He can lay it down if he has to. And you don't really have to see too much more. As much as I would like to see more Vader scenes like that, that movie kind of was enough. But I still would like to see more. Anyways, before I start geeking out over that, there were other characters that were great in this film. K2SO is the new droid. I think I mentioned him earlier. Was played by Alan Tudyk. Very well done. He's kind of the comic relief, but he's a really good character. And he even has an arc too. He's kind of a smartass, but later on in the film, he makes the ultimate sacrifice, even as a robot, and dies a hero, keeping Jyn and Cassian safe while they're trying to steal the plans for the Death Star. So that was even cool that he got a nice little arc. Saw Gerera, played by Forrest Whitaker. Forrest Whitaker is an amazing actor, and I love seeing him in every movie that he's been in. He was great. I remember seeing him years ago in an old ABC miniseries called North and South. He was great in that. He was great in, even like recent movies that he's been in with Arnold Schwarzenegger. What was it, Last Stand? He was good in that. I can't remember all his movies, but every time I see him in a film, I'm always like, oh, he's great. He's a great actor, and I love what he brings to the screen. He did an awesome job as Saw Gerera, was very believable, and I liked the cool thing about his character is, and he even says that there's not much of me left, or he says there's not much of me left to Jyn when he thinks that she's there to kill him, because he's gone kind of crazy. He's just so bent on defeating the Empire that he's kind of lost it over the years. But what was cool about that was, like, they show him, he's mostly machine now. He's kind of like Darth Vader in a sense. He's kind of the mirror image on the Resistance side, where he's, his legs are machine, he needs an apparatus to breathe, he's a little crazy, he can command a lot of people. I thought that was really cool how they did it with his character, and I thought it was a nice, just kind of cool to see that mirror of, like, okay, this is the Empire's big bad guy, and this is the Resistance big bad guy. So he was amazing. Now the two other characters I really liked were Chirrut and Baze, and I hope I'm saying his name right. I'm probably not, but those were played by Donnie Yen and Wen Zhang. And I'm gonna put a little card up here, over here, hopefully, that you can see where Jesse, the other Brick Ninja who comes on once in a while, who did a video about why they even cast them in the movie. And I thought it was pretty telling that because a lot of stuff in Hollywood is changing because the demographics are changing. Like, China has a much more, the Chinese people have disposable income, so they go and see movies now, and this is a huge part of Hollywood's revenue is from China. So that's why you're kind of seeing a lot of the reboots and Hollywood being very lazy about remaking movies. Because they don't want to make anything for American audiences. They want to make them for international audiences, and mainly Chinese audiences who haven't seen a lot of the stuff that we've seen. So it's harder to fool American audiences, and it's easier and cheaper to fool audiences that aren't as cultured as the American audiences. Anyways, those two characters, I think, because Star Wars has always had a hard time gaining ground or any traction in the Middle Kingdom, which is China, they cast the two biggest Chinese stars, film stars, in this movie, and it did okay. It did. I think Rogue One was in theaters for about 45 or so days in China, which is pretty good. The Force Awakens was in theaters for 6 months over there. It did really well over there, as opposed to The Last Jedi that was only in theaters in China for 12 days. It's a whole other topic. Anyways, Chirrut was played by Donnie Yen, and Baze was played by Wen Zhang. I hope I'm saying those names right. Beautifully done characters. They were the spiritual guides of this movie, especially Chirrut, who plays kind of the mystic, like I said, and this is the whole hero's journey kind of formula for most movies. I really appreciated those characters, and I thought that they played them well, and they had a nice arc, and I actually cared about them towards the the end of the movie when they meet their end. Great characters. Now, of course, Darth Vader, who was voiced again by Earl Jones, James Earl Jones, I should say. And like I said, that the first time you see him, it's amazing because they open they just show like how big he is visually in this movie, where Krennic is waiting for him in this castle. And let me go back a little bit. When I heard that Darth Vader was going to be in this movie, and I heard rumors that he was going to have a castle, I was like, that is going to be so stupid. Why are we going to give Darth Vader a castle? This is like ridiculous. But they did it well. I mean, like, it wasn't cheesy at all, because they didn't go too much into it. I mean, it was just kind of this place where he meditates on his hate, and where he actually lost his battle to his friend Obi-Wan Kenobi. And they did it really well. They did it amazingly well. And I was totally sold on it. It didn't look cheesy or stupid to me. But I like the scene where Krennic is waiting for him on this platform, and this door opens to reveal Vader. There's all this light behind him. And you see Krennic, and you just see the shadow of Vader. And I think that's a testament to how big and how important that character is to the Star Wars universe and to the cinematic universe. Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader are like the quintessential heroes of cinema, of even Western culture. I mean, even though there's so much of those stories that are borrowed from the Bible and things like that, those two characters really conceptualize evil and virtue and redemption. Anyways, with that said, they show his shadow. It's a really cool scene. You can see even the background, like the walls are in a V, like there's like a V impression in them. It's all about Vader at this castle, and it's all about him and how awesome he is, and totally serves his ego, and keeps him on a pedestal. So I thought that was a really cool scene. And of course, Vader, those last 2 minutes, or that minute where he's just like laying down the law in that hallway, and then they show him walk up to the end. I mean, he looks badass. He looks like the Vader we all expected to see and wanted to see for such a long time. And even if the movie, I almost want to say, even if the movie sucked, that last minute would have totally made up for it. It was amazing. It was amazing. It was an awesome thing to see. And then at the very end, we get to see Princess Leia. Now, I have to say, the CGI Tarkin looked really, really good. The CGI Leia doesn't look like Leia to me, and I know that they did all this stuff with proportions. They got a girl who had a face similar to her size and all this stuff, and had similar eye structure and bone structure, but it just didn't look right to me. It was like when she smiled was when it didn't look right anymore. It was before when she wasn't smiling, it looked more like her, but when she smiled, it was like hope. It just didn't look right to me. But it was a nice touch. I'm glad they put it in there. I would not want that in the film. I wish it was a little better. There was just something not quite right about it. But it was really cool because it totally leaves off right where A New Hope picks up. I mean, it totally picks up. That was such a cool thing to do. Kathleen Kennedy said that it was like a big chance for them to take with that film. And I'm surprised that they would even say that, because that movie was really good, and I'm sure it tested well too. That's what surprised me. That movie gave me so much hope for The Last Jedi. I'm like, wow, Disney is going to do this right. They're going to make these characters believable. They're going to give them heart like they were in the original films, but they're going to make it a little more gritty, a little darker like it should be, with a little more, violence and stuff like that. But like, we all know, and a lot of you agree with me, that The Last Jedi was a very big disappointment. In the fact that they pretty much just killed a bunch of characters unneedingly. Anyways, that is my feeling on Rogue One. What did you think of Rogue One? Did you like Rogue One? Did you like the characters? Were there characters you didn't like? Was there a scene that you didn't like? For example, the scene I didn't like was the one with Bodhi Rook and the Bukalik thing, whatever that. I don't know what the heck that is. This octopus that's like sliding its hands all over his face. that I felt like there could have been a better, or for me, if I was directing the film, I would have been like, nah, I don't want to put this octopus monster in there. I want to put something different. Because that didn't seem quite Star Warsy to me, and that was the one thing that kind of took me out. The other thing that took me out of the film, and a lot of people disagree with me on, is the music. There's a couple times the music was too much of a showcase. There was a couple scenes where it was dissonant and it was awkward, but for the most part the music was okay. The film was just so good. Those are the two things that took me out. But what did you like about the movie? What were your favorite scenes? Who was your favorite character? Who was your favorite actor from this film? Or if you just hated it and you think my review sucks, go ahead and tear me up in the comments if you want. Again, thanks for watching. The next review I'll be doing will be The Force Awakens. And then I'm going to go backwards from there. I'm going to go Return of the Jedi, Empire Strikes Back, New Hope, Revenge of the Sith, Attack of the Clones, and The Phantom Menace. And that'll be my reviews. And then hopefully I'll get on to Blade Runner and even Dread. That was an awesome movie. And some other things that I've seen recently that have been good. Anyways, thanks for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you guys next time.